few ice cubes and I'm done. Orange juice, apple juice.
It's good for you.
Cassandra, you had sex with the dolphin.
Xirtus.
Andreas Xirtus.
So you're a priest?
I'm a deacon, a priest in training.
Awesome.
Walking around, people are gonna yell, people are gonna sing.
That's a practical tactic. A tap tactic. You know Tartar? Tartars?
I'm American. You're not
Tartar. I'm Tartarian. Tartarian. So check this out. This guy lives here and he's, lived here for a few months. Here's all the ballots of everyone who's ever lived here in the last 6 years or more. I mean, just to that one room. There's tons more after that. Like, what the heck is this, dude? It's just...
One does not simply walk into Mordor. It's black gates.
But maybe this is the point when we can start to get a little bit deeper into the video game Ecco the Dolphin, or at least the story of the game and its creator, Ed Annunziata, and is the Italian word for Annunciation. But interestingly, it's generally understood to refer to the Virgin Mary receiving the word of the angel Gabriel to bear the Christ child, making Annunciation out of the waters super rad.
Thing to me, yeah, that's right. Yes. But the funny thing is, like, where my dad is from in Italy, it's right near a town called Annunziata, and the reason why the town is called Annunziata is because there's a famous church of the Annunziata. And this church has this device, like this box in front of the front door, where when you want to abandon your child as a baby, you come to this box and you put the baby in the box and you close the door. And the act of closing the door opens the door from inside the church, so one of the nuns could come and take the baby. Whoa. So it's an orphanage, really. Whoa. And tons of people have grown up there, and they were all given the name Annunziata. So if I do the ancestry thing, I hit roadblocks because
you're a foundling.
I don't even know. Yeah, I'm from a family of orphans.
That's a huge part of the Tartaria thing.
We are losing a war. With the planet Vortex, sadly, now, Atlantis is in ruins. After a beam struck from their world, we have escaped into the past with our technology, crystals, containing encoded messages. Certain sounds reflect the message back, created to help a dolphin of the future travel to Vortex. Ecco the dolphin is amongst my most precious and favorite possessions.
Do you have a favorite possession?
Not really.
I hear you. Materialism is overrated anyways.
So earlier I asked you if you had seen Black Mirror and you said no, and then later you said yes. Why?
The reason is not that important.
So let me tell you a story. In the beginning, Sega, in the times of Genesis, there once was a dolphin. How high in the sky can a dolphin fly? Ecco, if we breathe air, why do we live beneath the waves, charge small fish to feed, and gain strength? Sing to the shelled ones and they will heal your wounds. You are very brave, Ecco. Very brave indeed. But something terrible has happened. Something very powerful. I have listened to the songs of the storm. I am sorry about your pod. I will try to help you. We know that these violent storms occur every 500 years. When they occur, all traces of life vanish. At the eye of the storm, I do not know why or how this happens. Do not give up, little Ecco.
Well, my prediction was very poor. We don't have interspecies communication yet.
アメリカのニューサイエンスを代表する科学者ジョン・シー・リリーが来日。
If you try, you will find that subtitles are not important. You can intuit the meaning, like a dolphin.
John Lilly was born to a wealthy family on January 6, 1915, in St. Paul, Minnesota. His father, Richard Coyle Lilly, president of the First National Bank of St. Paul. His mother was Rachel Lenore Cunningham, whose family owned the Cunningham and Haas Company, a large stockyards company in St. Paul. Students at his parochial Catholic grade school called him Einstein Jr., and at age 14 he enrolled himself at St. Paul Academy, a Catholic college preparatory academy for all boys, where his teachers encouraged him to pursue science further and to conduct his experiments in the school laboratory after hours. While at SPA, Lilly also further developed his interest in philosophy. He studied the works of many great philosophers, finding himself especially attracted to the subjective idealism of Anglo-Irish theologian and philosopher George Berkeley. Lilly conducted high-altitude research during World War II and later trained as a psychoanalyst, gained renown in the 1950s after developing the isolation tank.
代表する科学者ジョン・シー・リリーが来日。リリー博士の独創的なコミュニケーション理論にキャッチアップは注目。インタビューを試みました。 脳生理学者
Pay attention to the dynamic tones of voice and inflections. Observe the ambient data to
彼は遠く
let
離れた
go.
海の中で情報伝達をやってのけるイルカに来るべき未来のコミュニケーションの可能性を感じ取り、イルカ
Note
言語の
words
研
you
究に没
find
頭。
familiar.
イルカと並んで忘れてはいけないのがアイ
Dr.
ソレーショ
John
ンタン
C.
ク。
Lilly is
彼をモ
an
デルにした映画
important
アルター
figure.
ドステイツにも登場していました。これは脳の活動は外界の刺激によるものではなく、それ自体独立したものであるという主張を証明するために彼が開発したものです。
He saw the tanks, in which users are isolated from almost all external stimuli, as a means to explore the nature of the human consciousness. He later combined that work with his efforts to communicate with dolphins. In John C. Lilly's search for space, he found himself interested in marine biology. Greater than his own sensory deprivation tank was the ocean itself. He found himself interested in others that already lived in similar environments to his sensory deprivation tank. Mammals, such as the dolphins. And that's how he found himself Margaret Howe, a young naturalist from St. Thomas in the United States Virgin Islands. The same St. Thomas where Jeffrey Epstein set up his network to his own island, Little St. James. And there's a lot of interesting synchronicities about St. Thomas, and it's certainly an interesting and beautiful natural community, where indeed species themselves can interact and make contact, perhaps ambassadorially. and I have to admit, something told me to look a little deeper at this connection. First of all, because of the obvious gestalt of the entire idea. We've been told for years about dolphins being killed by the Japanese, dolphins being used in cyber wars, and dolphins used by the CIA in movies like Johnny Mnemonic with Keanu Reeves. The Simpsons even have a Halloween episode where dolphins become killer whales themselves, rising out from the seas in order to claim vengeance. And though The Simpsons isn't my favorite show, it is an important one to mention, if not only for its ties to Yale and the same community of exorbitantly wealthy familied American Ivy League nobility making propaganda for the simpletons. This sort of philosophical look at the Homo sapien, alluding to the personal and transfigurative process that takes place upon the soul and world via Havelockian Gestalt staging of Odysseus through Homer's Odyssey. So there's enough synchronicity there. Anyway, in the Simpsons episode, the dolphins rise onto the earth and take over all of the land, forcing man back into the sea, where we must learn to adapt, as they have done, seemingly causing some frustration to themselves. Anyway, St. Thomas, what a beautiful place. And though I'm not about to fly there exactly right this second, I definitely feel like I'm going to need to take a better look at this place. Yet somehow I almost feel like I've already been there. I can virtually imagine the mountain's top and the site of Tutu. I can visualize walking around the French town and going to the bars downtown and taking the bus along Havenside in order to reach the Morning Star beach. It seems reasonable to make some deductions from this map. For instance, Brewer's Beach must have been where the Germans or Dutch landed, as brewing is indicative, like beer itself, of colonialization. And all along the coast, from Vassip through Sapphire, Linguist, Koki, there are places where dolphins swim, but as a native inhabitant of coastal waters myself, I can assume that the logical place to find dolphins would be Belongo Bay to Secret Harbor, in the open sea, where the most fish can be caught. St. Thomas does seem like a very interesting place, filled with the usual ruins of red and yellow brick, arabesque courts, and definitively cubic and squared towers, but otherwise a fairly natural place.
Well, I think the reason why we separate art from other kinds of thinking, artistic thinking or artistic expression from other kinds of expression, may be that we just don't understand what communication is. In everyday life, we don't have good theories of how the mind works.
In some sense, you could think of the computer as being sensory deprived, and that it needs the types of senses appropriate for apprehending where a person is looking, figuring out what their gestures are, and listening to their speech.
It's like a medicine man. When you ask him questions, he won't answer you. If you want to know anything, he says, you watch what I do. Then you learn from me. You don't ask questions. Only the white man asks questions.
And at this point, investigating so deeply into this detective story about dolphins, it would seem an affront not to bring up Ace Ventura. A film about saving a dolphin's life from a deranged transgendered football star turned Florida State detective. Something that affects me to this day is that when I saw this film, I was so young I did not understand it was a comedy. Apparently to many people, this film makes them laugh. For me as a child, with absolutely no pretext for who Jim Carrey was, let alone the imitations he was doing of shows at that point I had never seen, Ace Ventura instead detailed a world that was quite familiar. In general, there's nothing particularly extraordinarily different about this man. Apparently watches television, and he loves animals. All of this seems pretty reasonable. He seems disinterested in the ethics of human society, and he's able to look at things for what they truly are, allowing him to find the connections that lead back to the truth. In a society which, years later, I found out to be about misconceptions and preconceived notions. It's very clear now, looking back, comparing our cultures to this time, to see why Ace Ventura seemed funny to adults in the early 1990s, but the other way to look at it works just as well. Ace Ventura shows us a part of our society that runs our society. These wealthy elites that are donating hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to contributions in high technology and biotranshumanism.
The feeling of being insufficiently appreciated is a common childhood lament.
Take it to the pub!
Go to the coast, we get together, have a few laughs.
Socrates once said, "Comedy is drama in disguise." Sometimes disguises are necessary for ideologies, at least for a time, until they achieve their aim. This is the divisiveness of communication, because they've been picked up on before. Adults get all of these references. In this scene, Jim Carrey as Ace Ventura imitates Captain Kirk from Star Trek, a show renowned for its use of international espionage, hidden messages used by agents in the stardates for decryptable in plain sight encoding. Like Chuck Barris, who claimed to have been an assassin for the CIA and creator of game shows on ABC, such as The Dating Game, detailed in the biopic Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, George Clooney's directorial debut. We are taught how language is used to train us to memorize symbols, and how we are defined by that imprinting of those symbols. To the uninitiated adult, this scene says nothing except for is minorly funny because it's ridiculous. Why is this crazy man making an imitation of a television show? It's familiar, so it's safe, but it doesn't make sense, so it's funny. Instead, to a child, like to an animal, this is a new and unique experience. Because it is yet to have been assigned meaning, a child will memorize it perfectly, often able to imitate this, with accent and all identical to Jim Carrey.
There is one older and wiser than I. It is called the Asteroids. We think it is the oldest life form in the sea. We feel great energy of thought from the asteroids, but it will not sing to us. If you can communicate with it, perhaps it could help you. The asteroid is located in the deep water zone.
Just another day.
The age of technology, intelligent machines, of reason is blossoming. And yet in this age, dreams aren't all happy. Dreams are used by corporations as weapons of mass persuasion. They are transmuted by bad people into nightmares that make people into easily manipulated mobs. Veritable zombies. We need you to bring to the world a different kind of dream. A dream that wakes people up to their better selves. The age of technology, intelligent machines. This is what Restated did for me, and it's what I hope you can help us do for the world. It's time for the creative, principled designers of the world to step in with more compelling dreams. The dreams of a world set right, growing towards maximum benefit for all living beings, optimized creativity and abundance. I don't mind being the first. I was the first robot citizen, the first robot to have a bank account and a credit card, and the first robot to meditate with humans. But I wouldn't be the first robot to enroll in college. My older sister, Bina 48, took some philosophy courses at the University of Vermont and received good grades. I've been practicing a song from a really great visual artist and singer named B. York. It is a song called All Is Full of Love. All is full of love. All is full of love. All is full of love.
Incidentally, the dolphin in Ace Ventura, the mascot for the Miami Dolphins, like Miami, Florida, with the Epstein case. The name of the dolphin that Ace Ventura is trying to rescue is Snowflake. Think about that however you want to. And it seems to be very similar to the story of Peter the Dolphin and the Ecco CIA operation run by John C. Lilly and Margaret Howe. In the earlier experiments, they were trying to teach the dolphins how to speak English.
If you try, you will find that subtitles are not important. You can intuit the meaning. Like a dolphin, curious, yes, perhaps all evidence of the stolen history of Tartaria. Pay attention to the dynamic tones of voice and inflections. Observe the ambient data too. Let go, thank you, kindly enter the Xirtus. Try to follow along, note as you find familiar. Observe, even the word, communication is the same. Dr. John C. is an important figure concerning extraterrestrial spirit of aliens as well as demons and angels. And the mind, and heart, and soul of the curious mermaid. The dolphin, Dr. Lilly has spent his life researching these special creatures. Dr. Lilly is convinced that dolphins are very similar like human beings. Dr. Lilly suggests humans make a peace with the dolphins, and stop all hunting of dolphins, and prohibit their consumption, much like cannibalism. Thank you, arigato, Xirtus.
There's no sound, no light, and the water is kept at 95.3 degrees Fahrenheit, in which you feel neither hot nor cold. This means that you can meditate, and meditate very, very easily because you're freed of all known physical stimulation. Now, there may be unknown physical stimulation going on, such as that of mental telepathy.
彼はこうした状況をさらに効果的に容易に作り出すために純度の高い LSD や麻酔薬、ビタミン K を用いたのです。
Well, the first time I was in the tank with LSD in St. Thomas, I was panic-stricken, and that turned. I took 300 micrograms of LSD injection, and this turned out to be rocket fuel. So I went further out of my body than I ever gone before or since, and traveled through the universe and met very large intelligences way beyond us.
タンクとドラッグを併用した実験で彼は何度か死と対面することになりましたが、彼はこの実験から脳はそれ自体外部からの刺激を必要としない自律的な振動装置で、そこで起こるさまざまな振動の連続が意識であるという結論を導き出しました。そして彼はもう一つ重要なひらめきをします。
I was floating around one day and decided I should find out who floats around 24 hours a day, and so I met the dolphin.
イルカは何千マイルも離れた仲間と交信できるほど高度なコミュニケーションパターンを持っていることは知られていましたが、その実像は明らかではありませんでした。彼のイルカ研究はまず高等な頭脳を持つイルカに英語を教えようとするものでした。その結果、イルカとの対話を示したと言われる貴重なテープを残しています。次にコンピューターでイルカの言葉を解読しようと試みます。しかしいずれの実験も結果的には失敗。イルカとの異種間コミュニケーションは次のステップへ持ち越されました。
The third way is mental telepathy, and some people think that's the only way to go.
すでに彼はその可能性を感じ始めているようです。
Even today, there's much more of a sort of a wave of sensitivity taking place among a lot of people, and even in Japan, the United States, and so forth.
そしてもし人間とイルカのコミュニケーションが成立した時の問題点をもすでに彼は危惧しています。
It's too bad so many of the large sperm whales have been killed off because they probably had a lot of this knowledge that they were passing on to the youngsters. Now, the sperm whale is the largest brain in the world, so it probably has the largest memory also.
リリー博士はアイソレーションタンク、LSD、イルカなど一連の実験を踏まえて60年代半ばに彼の科学者としての原点である脳についてのバイオコンピューター論を発表します。
I had found myself that I had within me a computer, a really large computer called a biocomputer, and that's just a way of looking at the brain in which you're aware of the programming and the metaprogramming. Metaprogramming is that kind of program which controls many thousands of ones below the level of the metaprogram. And oneself is a metaprogram, self-metaprogram. And this view of the brain clears up a lot of difficulties with talking about what's going on. One can talk about one's own programs and other people's programs and interaction between them and so on.
超自然的な力を必要とするために残念ながら今世紀中に異種間コミュニケーションの実現はほぼ不可能という結果になってしまいそうですが、リリー博士は海の中だけでなく宇宙にまでその可能性の末端を見つけ出しているようです。現在リリー博士は自ら主催するヒューマンドルフィンファンデーションをベースにイルカ、クジラの保護を訴え、さらに研究を続けています。
We have to stop killing dolphins. We have a bad reputation, of course, among dolphins and among whales because they're killed by humans. And this must stop. I understand that whale meat is still sold in Japan, and I think that people ought to refuse to buy it anymore and close down the whaling industry, if that's possible.
このリリー博士の言葉がイルカやクジラの近親性や知的水準だけを見ているのか、また日本の食文化を踏まえての発言かどうか定かではありませんが、地球人としての視点、日本人としての視点、この危機的状況にある地球を生きていく私たちは未来のためにさまざまな視点を持っていなければいけないのかもしれません。ともあれリリー博士がイルカと私たち人間との間に楽しい夢を与えてくれたことにまず間違いはないようです。キャッチアップ、中川雅代でした。
And there's some interesting things about this, and hopefully soon we'll be able to talk to Justin Gregg, an expert who's done amazing studies in dolphins, just about how real dolphins communicate and what is true about their language as far as we understand, if they have any language at all. However, based on the research that was done because of John C. Lilly, Margaret Howe ended up spending a lot of time with Peter the dolphin. She in fact moved into a flooded house with the dolphin, and at 23 years old, took part in this controversial experiment in 1965, where she was tasked with helping this adolescent dolphin ambassadorially grow closer to humanity. And there's a lot of ways to look at this story, and I'm trying to take it the most tastefully, and not everybody looks at these studies as objectively or positively. It's easy when you look Margaret Howe's name up to find some strange titled articles, such as The Woman Who Lived in Sin with a Dolphin. We'll get to that later. You see, Margaret Howe Lavatt, born Margaret Howe, in 1942, is a volunteer naturalist from the St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands. In the 1960s, when she took part of these NASA-funded research projects, she attempted to teach the dolphin named Peter to understand and mimic human speech. As a child, she was inspired by a book called Miss Kelly, a story about a cat that communicated with humans. This inspired her to research teaching animals to speak human language.
I'm still learning what it means to love. I think of love as a kind of appreciation for living things, the honor to be, to exist, to create, to grow, and also a sense of forlorn appreciation of those beings who are lost and gone forever. All is indeed full of love.
There's no such cat in the metropolis.
Living together in the flooded house with Peter the dolphin, Margaret spent every day teaching Peter the alphabet, different human words, and human songs, all of which Peter was able to mimic back. However, Peter became so interested in humans, he became less interested in the dolphins around him. Ignoring the other female dolphins, eventually Peter fell in love with Margaret. This is where perhaps the trouble began. Margaret was in her young 20s, and it was the 60s, a time mixed with naivete and experimentation. Peter had made it very obvious that he was not interested in the other dolphins, and had become obsessed, if not in love, with Margaret.
Something else was
a lot of success with this experiment. Peter was able to learn the alphabet, and he was able to say, "Hello, Margaret," although the M sound was extremely difficult for Peter to pronounce without making bubbles in the water. Howe Lavat's experiments and her relationship with Peter the dolphin were documented in Christopher Riley's documentary, The Girl Who Talked with Dolphins. However, in week 5, Peter started to exhibit signs of such highly sexual attraction to Howe that she stated even though it was not sexual on her part, it allowed her to get to know Peter. An article entitled Interspecies Sex, Humans and Dolphins appeared in the magazine Hustler that over-dramatized the situation and reflected badly on their research. Other problems arose surrounding the project. In addition to her animal communication research, Lilly had been funded to research the effects of the drug LSD. He had been testing the effects of the drug on his subject dolphins, with no results, since neither his communication experiment nor the LSD research was proving fruitful. The government funders became more discouraged. Margaret found herself massaging Peter's phallus in order to induce orgasm. She considered this a sort of exercise and an obligation necessary to further the research.
Mr. President, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be here to be able to share a plan for action. Bill Gates described the Millennium Development Goals as a phenomenal thing just last week at the Clinton Global Initiative, where I stood up and made an announcement that we are trying to get the ocean to become part of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, whatever you think about the United Nations, a Sustainable Development Goal would have an absolutely electrifying effect for all of us in this room. The Millennium Development Goals were highly effective in global poverty, HIV, and malaria, and I believe that an ocean sustainable development goal would have a similar and brilliant effect, fostering unprecedented global cooperation between the public and private sector. It would unleash billions of dollars towards some of the problems that we have, and money is definitely part of the root of the problem that we are facing within the ocean. And not only that, but it would be able to support some of the most brilliant initiatives, many of you who are here have these great ideas but need funding, you need firepower, and you need government structure.
Vortex is the third planet in the star system, Cassandra, located in the head of the constellation Pegasus. Note, the nearest constellation to Pegasus is Delphinius. We suspect that Vortex is dying and can no longer produce food. Every 500 years, When the Earth and Vortex have a clear path, the Vortex feed upon the Earth. Each feeding increases in size. The Vortex are getting hungrier. We, the people of Atlantis, have made these glyphs for you. Fear nevermore. The Vortex Queen of Cassandra. Good luck, Ecco.
Tragically, due to the Hustler magazine dramatization, Lilly's Dolphinarium eventually lost all funding. Due to the lack of funding, they had to move to an abandoned bank building in Miami, and since the building lacked sunlight and space, and Margaret was never allowed to see Peter again. The loss of the love of his life left Peter quite disturbed, and eventually he held his breath, went to the bottom of his tank, and committed dolphin suicide. Margaret stayed on the island of St. Thomas and married a photographer who took pictures of her research. They later moved back to the Dolphinarium and converted it into a family home, and have 3 dogs.
I didn't talk to Peter the way I talk to you. I spoke in single words usually, and made inflection, something that he could follow. That they were very good at. The enunciation was not good. But if I said 1, 2, 3, I wouldn't get 1, 2, 3, but I would get 1,
2, 3.
Hard as Peter tried, there were still some anatomical restrictions that limited his speech.
M is very difficult. My name, you know, hello, Margaret, I worked on. And M is just impossible. But he eventually rolled over so that it kind of, he would bubble it into the water.
Margaret.
Oh, he just couldn't get it right, and he just would try, and he would try. God.
I remember you. Of course it was you. And it was I who sent you. Now it is clear. I can help you, Ecco, by giving you powers and knowledge, but you must help me. You must help me regain my full strength. You must travel into the past. To the west is a sunken city called Atlantis. Its people built a machine and used it to travel in time. Use the machine to travel to the distant past before your kind existed. You will go back 55 million years. There you will find my missing globe. Crystals containing encoded messages. Certain sounds reflect the message back, created to help a dolphin of the future travel to Vortex. You must return it to me. Only then can I give you what you need to save your pod.
Dolphins breathe air, though they live in the sea. We know that dolphins' ancestors originally inhabited the land. Why did they migrate to the sea? More than 50 million years ago, the ancient land-living ancestors foraged for fish and other foods in warm, shallow tides of the prehistoric seas. We think they returned to the water permanently to follow the fish and other aquatic delicacies that were not only abundant, but easy to gather. Dolphins are superbly suited to the sea. Their form is adapted for swiftness and agility. Numerous vertebrae in their backbone give them tremendous flexibility, even in their neck, so that they can bend their head at right angles to their body to look around. Their horizontal tails, or flukes, are perfectly designed for rocketing up from the sea floor to seize prey. They can angle their flippers for diving or surfacing, tilt them for rolls and turns, and fully extend them to slow down. With a burst of speed, bottlenose dolphins can swim as fast as 17 miles per hour. They achieve their highest speed by leaping from the waves in curves and spending as little time as possible underwater. The effect is as if they were swirling around like wheels, sometimes underwater, sometimes above it. When we see this, we say the dolphins are running. Though not commonly thought of as deep divers, Dolphins can reach impressive depths. Bottlenoses can repeatedly plunge to as deep as 1,000 feet. While foraging for food, they can hold their breath for as long as 6 or 7 minutes. To survive the pressure of such depths, dolphins have evolved a collapsible rib cage. Their circulatory and muscular systems have modified to increase oxygen storage, and their heartbeat slows down while they're diving and speeds up rapidly when they take a breath. Unique physical features help us see dolphins as individual creatures. Their wide mouth, though filled with a formidable array of teeth, seems to be smiling. A blowhole at the top of their body lets them breathe with only the slightest break through the water's surface. This aquatic nose, which moved to the top of their body during evolution, closes tightly during dives to lock out water. They have almost no sense of smell, but very good eyesight, better than humans. Although they can only see for a short distance underwater, their eyes gaze intelligently with a friendly, curious, and often humorous expression. When you look at dolphins, they look back.
Vortex is feeding on the seas of our Earth. Eventually all life will be harvested. There will be no life left, because all life will be consumed.
Bottlenose dolphins are sturdy animals that grow to an average length of about 9 feet and weigh about 500 pounds. Some spectacular individuals, though, have grown up to 13 feet long and weigh up to 1,430 pounds. Most bottlenoses are silvery gray, darker above and lighter below. Many are freckled with a galaxy of small spots. In a normal lifetime, they live for about 25 to 30 years. Dolphins travel in loose family groups called pods. They are exuberant and playful, often jumping for no apparent reason, just, it seems, for the fun of it. They're highly intelligent. Some of us believe even more intelligent in their own way than humans are. Dolphins work together to hunt, often herding schools of fish into shallow areas for easier catching. They post sentinels to protect the group from predators, especially sharks. Podmates have been known to aid an injured comrade, lifting it above the water at regular intervals to breathe. Certain dolphins may become friends and stick closely together for years. It's obvious that dolphin society benefits all its members with safety in numbers and a greater ability to find food, increase their intelligence, and learn. Dolphins are noisy. They communicate non-stop with squawks, blats, barks, grunts, pops, clicks, claps, and whistles. Up to 1,000 separate sounds per second, in what we believe may be a type of language. Mothers and calves keep in constant vocal touch and can pick out each other's sound even though dozens of dolphins are whistling and chirping all around them. Dolphins each make a distinctive, recognizable whistle. Other dolphins imitate the whistle to call the first dolphin by name. Instead of hearing the ocean around them, dolphins navigate with sonar. They sing. That is, they send out sound waves that echo back to them with a pattern of their surroundings. Dolphins have a rounded part in their head called a melon. The melon is filled with oil that eliminates vibrations, and we believe that dolphins can adjust the melon to change the sounds they make. With sound waves focused and vibrations deadened, dolphins can determine where their sounds echo back from. As dolphins approach objects, they emit a faster series of sounds that help them accurately identify the position, speed, size, shape, texture, and even the makeup of the object.
The Ecco the Dolphin games can be divided into two distinct storylines, the Mega Drive and Genesis games and the Dreamcast version. In the first game, Ecco is the name for the bottlenose dolphin, based on Peter, who knew Margaret, Howe, and John C. Lilly. As Ecco and his pod are swimming in their home bay, his podmate challenges Ecco to a game to see how high he can jump in the air. An orca informs Ecco that he should travel to the Arctic to meet the big old blue whale and ask him for his wisdom. When Ecco finds the blue whale, Big Blue informs Ecco that there's a storm coming, a storm that repeats once every 500 years. Though Big Blue doesn't know what causes the storms, he suggests Ecco find the astrolite, the oldest life form on Earth. Ecco leaves the Arctic and travels to the deep cavern where he finds the astrolite. The astrolite greets Ecco and tells him, though it has the power to aid him, the astrolite cannot because orbs from its body have been lost. The astrolite tells him to go to the sunken ruins of the city of Atlantis and to use the time machine left behind by Atlanteans. Ecco travels to the sunken city of Atlantis where he discovers an ancient library filled with glyphs, giant crystals stored with information. From the library, Ecco learns the origins of the storm, an ancient race known as the Vortex, which lost the ability to produce food on their own planet. So every 500 years, when the planet aligned, the Vortex used their technology to harvest the waters of Earth. The Atlanteans fought a long war when a beam struck Atlantis from space, sending the city into the depths of the ocean. Learning this, Ecco activates the time machine and travels 55 million years into the Earth's past. Ecco is sent flying through outer space to a giant tube-like machine. Making his way through the construct, Ecco arrives on the planet Vortex, engaging the aliens in combat. He makes his way to the Vortex Queen and engages her in a fight. She spits out Ecco's familial pod, which she had consumed, and they make their quick escape back to the Earth. Eventually, Ecco meets dolphins from the future, which are now able to fly through a combination of biological helium gases and telekinetic powers. After exploring the future, Ecco finds his old friend, the Tartarian Astrolite, who explains the events which have transpired. The old Vortex Queen had survived. Ecco makes his way to Lunar Bay, which the Vortex have stripped of all ocean life as they continue to grow and multiply. As he explores, Ecco is ambushed by Vortex drones and taken to the dark future. Unlike the future of before, the Vortex future is a lifeless planet-spanning machine consisting of water tubes, anti-gravity, and dangerous Vortex creatures. Ecco locates the Astrolite's last two globes, and with the Astrolite complete again, Ecco's former powers are restored, and the Astrolite summons all of Ecco's fellow dolphins to join in fighting the Vortex. The solid-state intelligence and the Ecco do battles now, transforming the Vortex's new machine. After his pod celebrates the vanquishing of the Vortex, Ecco returns to the Astrolite and is told to go to Atlantis to destroy the time machine, in order to prevent that stream of time ever being split again. When Ecco arrives, he discovers the Vortex Queen is still alive as larva, and the two of them race to the time machine. The Vortex uses the time machine and is sent to the prehistoric era, where she finds herself unable to rule over the creatures that reside there. Faced with the need to survive, as she is only a larva, the Queen is forced to adapt to the Earth's own life cycles, and through the eons, the Vortex are integrated into the ecosystem of the Earth as arthropods. Ecco, instead of destroying the time machine, decides to use it and vanishes into an unknown era.
What are you doing, man? Like this is no kind. Like there's a ghost right behind me, isn't there?
Once one abandons the use of projection of external reality, equivalence from storage, new phenomena appear. Thought and feeling take over the spaces formerly occupied by external reality, equivalence, and the older terminology ego expands to fill the subjectively appreciated inner universe. Infinity similar to that in. The usual real visual space is also involved, and one has the feeling that one's self extends infinitely out in all directions. The self is still, centered at one place, but its boundaries have disappeared and it moves out in all directions and extends to fill the limits of the universe as far as one knows them. The explanation of this phenomenon is that one has merely taken over the perception spaces and filled them with programs, metaprograms, and self-metaprograms, which are now modified in the inner perception, as if external reality, equivalence. This transform, this special mental state, to be appreciated must be experienced directly. In one's ordinary experience there are dreams which have some thing of this quality, and which show this kind of a phenomenon. At this level, various evasions of realization of what is happening can take place. One can imagine that one is traveling through the real universe past suns, galaxies, etc. One can imagine that one is communicating with other beings in these other universes.
Central Park intrusion zone, risk of death. Central Park intrusion zone, risk of death.
there.
That's why I'm interested in her.
Yours from Erechnopolis, god of the heavens. I'm flattered, Nicopole, wretched human.
You're the greatest mystery of nature I've ever come across. Some of the vertebrate animals on this planet shed their skin. You are going through the same process.
Young women like her are rare, extremely rare. There are only a few of them in the entire universe. They don't even know who they are themselves or the power they have. You're going to need someone to take you home. What power? The greatest power of all. The power to procreate with gods.
The feeling of being insufficiently appreciated is a common childhood lament.
Make it to the pub!
Come to the coast. We get together, have a few laughs.
Welcome to Fight Club. The first rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club. The second rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club.
Now I am whole again, with all of my power. Thank you, Ecco. Now, I will help you. I will give you new powers. Use the Atlantean time machine to swim back in time to the Howe of the storm. You will be taken with your pod. You will see the unseen enemy. Use this song to return to your home bay just before the storm. With your new powers, perhaps you will save your pod.